Welcome back to the David Kurten Show here on today's News Talk, TNT. And it is fantastic to have back on the show with me today, David Griffiths. David is the leader of the Scottish Heritage Party, the part of the Heritage Party that is putting forward candidates in Scotland. But we're all very linked in together behind the scenes. David, welcome back to the show.
I'm loving being back on this wonderful show on wonderful TNT, fighting the global delete, overcoming every obstacle. But David, with the Scottish hate bill coming in, am I going to be in prison for the next time I'm coming on your show?
Well, this is what we need to do, isn't it? Because they're making life very difficult for us at the moment who are opposing this rubbish. But we want to get into power and then get rid of this hate crime bill, don't we? Look, what I hear about this bill, what is it? The Public Order and Hate Crime Scotland Act that's coming in April. It sounds absolutely horrendous. What is going on with this bill?
It is more than horrendous. It's been hit by the Scottish Parliament for the last 3 years. They've had major difficulty in bringing it into law. But in my view, David, it is not at all legal. It's undemocratic. It attacks the family. It's a perversion of justice like we've not seen before in our country.
Absolutely. And, this is very, very concerning because things that we've just been allowed to say before, you have a bit of banter, I'm commentating on what goes on in politics. You are as well.
Yes.
You're a political candidate. You have views that represent the Heritage Party, which is socially conservative. And we might fall foul of this new law just for saying things that are simple common sense.
I'm packing my bags to go to jail because even though I love people, I do not like the emphasis in these last 3 years. There's memoranda I got here before me going back 3 years from the Scottish Parliament. They even do not know how to define what is a hate crime. Can I quote, David? Yeah. They say this: there is no single accepted definition of hate crime with different definitions produced for different purposes. So the Scottish government do not know what a hate crime is. Now, I know what a hate crime is. It's a deeply spiritual concept where feuds have gone on between people, often over many years. Roots of bitternesses have come in, but these are spiritual concepts, not ones we can easily work out in the natural realm, which is why all British law begins with the term spiritual and temporal. But laws coming out, the Senedd in Wales, coming out of Holyrood in Scotland, do not have that at the beginning of their laws. And so they do not have an understanding of what hate really is. And hate is wrong, but debate is right. Difference of opinion is right. And loving one another is right. Now, I can work with a Muslim person who will simply say a marriage between a man and a woman is wrong. The Christian says the same. All the scriptures of ancient days all define a marriage between a man and a woman. But if you say that today, you can be considered as having committed a hate crime. That is wrong. We must be able to portray our faith, whether you be Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist. We must be able to portray our politics without being accused or reported to the police as committing a hate crime.
Absolutely. And this is the majority view still. But, I respect the right of people to disagree with that view. If someone thinks that a marriage should be something else, they can say that if they want. Exactly. They shouldn't be criminalized for expressing an opinion. I would rebut and refute that opinion very vigorously. And if I were in Parliament, I would act to restore the traditional definition of marriage as a man and a woman. And I have that right to do that in a democratic society. But even more of a focus, it seems, is on the idea of gender and biological sex. And these days, if you say that a man can't get pregnant or a woman cannot have male reproductive organs, you seem to get attacked by all of these absolutely crazy people, but who have got themselves into positions of power.
The Scottish Parliament is in deep trouble, in my view, David, because it is attacking democratic views. It's attacking our right to say what we believe. And also, it is actually breaking its own law. Can I explain how? There is a part of the Act on ageism. Now, I'm 70 years of old and still fighting on. And I believe the values of my youth are being attacked by this act, by the Scottish Parliament. The values of my youth are in relation to the family. Now, this act gives a description of the various groups it's looking to protect, yet it does not include the family, mom, dad, and the kids, the traditional basis of society. It does not include that. What it does is have an emphasis on protecting those with LGBTQ views. Now, whilst I do not hate the homosexual, far from it. Look, we even had at one time, my wife and I, in running a charity, a homosexual solicitor who was a tremendous help to us. He believed in us having the freedom to express ourselves. So this is not an attack or hatred towards homosexuals. But what I am saying is that there is an overemphasis on LGBTQ and protecting people of that persuasion in this act than rather defending those who hold the traditional family values.
Absolutely. Very well said. We'll come back and discuss this much more after this quick news break. This is today's News Talk, TNT. Welcome back to the David Kurten Show on today's News Talk, TNT. And David Griffiths of the Scottish Heritage Party is still with me. And we're just talking about the Public Order and Hate Crime Act, which is coming into Scotland. And you were just saying before the break there that this is something that is, they are selling this as something to give protection to the LGBT people, but it isn't really, because there's no extra protection given to them in law. What it does is more, it gives them the right to get someone put in prison that they don't like what they're saying. So it gives them and other minority communities a hell of a lot more power and reinforces this two-tier policing, two-tier justice system that is coming in.
They're dressing it up, David. They're trying to present that it's an act to protect all people from hate. It is not, because, as I have previously said, the family is left out of this discussion. Can I tell you this? God loves the unborn child. Now, also, we've got an assisted dying bill going through Holyrood at this time. And there has to be in law the God factor. Our 1559 Elizabethan settlement brings this into law that God has to be protected. Yet part of this act, which has gone through Holyrood and has just come out on April Fool's Day, very significant. Part of this act actually abolishes the Blasphemy Act. Now, I believe it's time to protect God from hate, because God is our creator. So why shouldn't he be protected? So what this act does is remove God from being hated and replacing protection to people of minority sexual interest. There has to be something seriously wrong here. I do not want to blaspheme as a Christian, the God of Islam or Hinduism or whatever. I want to uphold my God, and I want him to be protected in law and the freedom to express faith or whatever faith you belong to. But this is an attack on that, and it is very significant. The Blasphemy Act is being removed and replaced by this so-called hate crime bill, which is encouraging hate rather than the love required in our nation.
Well, it's a new kind of blasphemy act, isn't it? It's like now,
Yes.
if you're a Christian, you have no recourse to law if someone blasphemes your Christian God, Jesus Christ. But someone who is LGBT, someone who's BLM, someone who's a radical feminist, maybe someone who's a Muslim, can now have recourse to law and make all kinds of complaints about things that they consider blasphemous to their beliefs. I mean, actually blasphemous in the case of, Muslims and Islam, but pseudo blasphemous in the case of LGBT. But my opinion is that hate is an emotion. You can't legislate against it. There shouldn't be anything called hate in law. The law should be objective. And absolutely, if you abuse somebody, if there's harassment, if there is violence or incitement to violence, those are objective things which should be against the law. But hate is so subjective, and one person can say something is hate, but another person can just having a bit of banter, and so it's absolutely wrong to put this concept of hate into law.
The Scottish government give an example of a person in a wheelchair. And that somebody comes up to this person. By the way this act is written is very childlike. I mean, any lawyer with any sense can just run riot with this act. This is not a professional act. And they give an example of a disabled person in a wheelchair, somebody coming up and say, "Take that, you cripple," and hits the person, throws them out the wheelchair, is now suddenly protected by this act. That is not true. The disabled person is protected by existing law. You are not allowed to go and abuse a disabled person. You don't need to have an anti-democratic hate crime bill to bring that into force. We do need to protect our disabled people. We do need to love them. But as you have said rightly, David, you can't legislate for this. This is something which comes from the heart of a nation. There's a Bible verse says, "The letter of the law killeth, the spirit giveth life." We need to restore the heart to our nation, David. And that means having a forgiving heart, a loving heart one to another, so a heart that cannot be legislated for, one which comes by a government which brings everybody together by encouragement of dialogue and understanding.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got a government here which is aggressively secular, and to the point of being anti-Christian. And there's only forgiveness in Christianity. There is no forgiveness in secularism. There is no forgiveness in cultural Marxism. What they're doing, as you've said here, is they're not going after actions like hitting someone over the head. They're going after words. So the target of this is what you might say on social media. Even comedians, and this is going to be devastating for things like the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which I went to, but that's going to close down because almost every act by any comedian or any show on stage in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival will fall foul of this, because somebody somewhere can take offense and claim that somebody is engaged in hate speech, and then they're going to find themselves in prison for being on the stage at the Edinburgh Fringe. It's ridiculous.
David, I was brought up in the city of Liverpool, and we have a rivalry with the city of Manchester. From where came a certain comedian called Bernard Manning. Now, Bernard Manning used to tell jokes about Scousers. He said, I go to Liverpool every year to visit my hubcaps. Now, for me, as a Liverpudlian, I think that's hilarious. Now, we know it's an exaggeration, but humor is an exaggeration. And so can we have a society where the good comedians can't actually make jokes? joke is a joke, and there needs to be an understanding of what's a joke and a serious threat.
Mm,
Bernard Manning was just telling a joke. I wasn't offended at all. In fact, I
mm.
thought it was hilarious.
Absolutely. And you know, if you don't want to listen to a comedian, you don't have to listen to them.
No.
You don't have to watch the television. You don't have to buy their video. You don't have to go and watch their show. But this is a bill that seems to want to come after everybody and regulate people's speech and stop people from speaking, even if they're in a place where you have to choose to go and see them. I mean, you know, Ricky Gervais, for example. I mean, I don't like a lot of his stuff because he is quite anti-Christian in a lot of what he says, but sometimes he tells some amazing jokes and they're very, very funny. His little skit about transgenderism last year was hilarious, but that he couldn't say that in Scotland now because he'd get a visit from the hate police and Big Brother.
David, do you remember Basil Fawlty and the Germans?
Yes, yes.
It was absolutely hilarious. The German people loved it. It was just a joke. It wasn't anything more than that. And it's as if our society's got so entrenched in legalism. We got to set our nation free from the letter of the law. We need to have a happy nation, not happy as a WEF have defined in their website, taking away everybody's democratic views and free, because that is the root of all this. It's a WEF looking to have a form of harmony where people are not allowed their own belief or opinion.
Indeed. Then just quickly, you are the solution, David, in Scotland, because you are going to be standing for Parliament and
in jail.
You're going to be, you know, you're not going to be in jail. Don't you get yourself in jail. We got to get you into Parliament there, and you know, with the Heritage Party, with the Scottish Heritage Party in Scotland, you're going to be standing. Now, just quickly, tell us about what you're going to do in Scotland. We've only got a minute left, but if you can briefly tell us.
Quickly, we're going to bring freedom. We're going to bring family values. We're going to bring nationhood of a real nationalist Scotland in a real nationalist UK. That is our heart. That is our passion. The SNP is globalist. We are real nationalists of nationalism within the context of a united kingdom.
Very well said. David Griffiths, thank you so much for joining me here on today's News Talk TNT.